Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call to order the April 8th Shelby Township Planning Commission meeting. Secretary Moore, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Dallo?
Here.
Mr. Seco?
Here.
Ms. Poutros?
Here.
Mr. Opone?
Here.
Mr. Meredith?
Here.
Mr. Flynn?
Here.
Chairman Moffett is out this evening. Acting Chairman Turner.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we go any further, I'd like to formally welcome Jean Meredith, our new commission member, aboard. Look forward to your involvement and ideas tonight and many meetings to come. First item on our agenda is, of course, approval of tonight's agenda.
So move.
Support.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of the minutes from our March 25th, 2019 meeting.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Under correspondence, we have two items. The first is a town center property split. Mr. Nguyen, you want to give us an overview on this one?
Sure. We've been working with the assessing department on a split of a property off of Lakeside Boulevard, south of Lakeside Boulevard, east of Shaner. There's an existing apartment development in back of the live-work units, and there's some interest in splitting the property between two different owners. And the reason it's come to you is that when they draw the lines where they want to split the property, they don't necessarily meet the setbacks of the C5 district. There's a 20-foot setback and a 30-foot setback for rear and side yards, respectively, and two of the buildings don't meet those by a small margin. This was approved as a PUD years ago in the C5 district, and these internal setbacks really are not relevant to the exterior development. And we thought, after talking to Mrs. Denowith's colleagues at our attorney's office and assessor and the engineer, that it would probably be best just to approve these kind of almost on an administrative type basis by the Planning Commission. So that's our recommendation, Mr. Chairman. Commission members, we think, again, it's more of a housekeeping item than anything substantive.
Okay, any commissioners have any questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Commissioner Poutros.
So they're keeping same use, like apartments for both parcels?
Yes.
And then are they going to have access agreement between the two?
Yes.
All right, that's all I have.
Anyone else? Hearing none, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Opone.
I move to approve the revised building setbacks for town center development as presented.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Opone, supported by Commissioner Moore. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Commissioner Opone.
Yes.
Commissioner Moore.
Yes.
Commissioner Dallo.
Yes.
Commissioner DeSico.
Yes.
Commissioner Poutros.
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith.
Yes.
Commissioner Flynn.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries. You're all set. Thank you. Next item is the Taco Bell site amendment. And again, Mr. Nguyen.
Yes, we all remember this site. That's the building with shipping containers. They're in the engineering process right now, and our engineer discovered there was an error in the survey, and the property line, there's a 5-foot differential between the property line that they showed us and the property line as it actually exists. And the consequence of that is a portion of the building encroaches into the setback by 5 feet. It's a very modest portion. I marked up a map for you. The engineer has subsequently given us a revised one, which you have here before you. Normally, these would go to the Board of Appeals. But because the C4 district actually, there's some language in there that says you have the authority to make modest adjustments, we thought the path of least resistance was to just present this to the Planning Commission. Again, it's not the whole building. It's just a projection of the front facade into the setback 5 feet. We have no objection.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Go ahead, Mr. Dallo.
No.
Oh,
I'll make a motion when you're ready.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
I move to approve the modified front yard setback for the Taco Bell restaurant. Site plan on Van Dyke.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Dallo, supported by Commissioner DeSico. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Commissioner Dallo.
Yes.
Commissioner DeSico.
Yes.
Commissioner Poutros.
Yes.
Commissioner Moore.
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith.
Yes.
Commissioner Flynn.
Yes.
Commissioner Opone.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries. All set.
Chairman.
Thank you. Next, we have two site plans. The first is for Alyssa Rittenberry, 46872 Vineyard Avenue, south of Auburn Road, west of Ryan, Class A non-conforming use. Mr. Nguyen?
Mr. Chairman, let me kind of introduce this to the Commission. This is a request for Class A non-conforming use approval for this home on the east side of Vineyard, south of Auburn Road. Site's been occupied by a single-family home for years. What's unusual is the parcel zone C1. If you look at the C1 zoning boundaries, it cuts through the neighborhood, kind of parallel to Vineyard from Auburn Road, maybe a distance of 300 feet. It doesn't take into account that there's a couple single-family homes that are in that district. As a non-conforming use, the owner can live there indefinitely with no penalty. But if for some instance the house was burned or damaged to 50% of its value, they couldn't rebuild as a home. So what this process does is give them that protection, and it will allow them to rebuild the house and have the full enjoyment of a conforming single-family home. Sometimes people can't get mortgage loans or refinance or get insurance coverage because of that. So we encourage people to come in to do that. Eventually we need to adjust the boundary lines, but this is a quick, easy process that protects the homeowner from that occurrence. Hopefully it wouldn't happen.
All right, now the applicant is here. Does he have anything else you'd like to add? No? Okay. Any questions from the commission? Hearing none, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Moore.
I move to support, I have a motion, to support Class A non-conforming use application for property 46872 Vineyard Avenue based on the following findings. The continued use of the existing single-family home will not negatively impact any abutting land uses. Number 2, the Class A designation would allow the applicant to rebuild the single-family home if destroyed by a fire or other natural disaster. And number 3, the C1 zoning classification is not appropriate for this location given the surrounding development pattern, which consists largely of single-family homes.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Moore, supported by Commissioner Rapone. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Rapone?
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith?
Yes.
Commissioner Flynn?
Yes.
Commissioner Dallow?
Yes.
Commissioner DeSico?
Yes.
Commissioner Boutros?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries. We're all set. Good luck. Thank you. Next site plan is for Michael Lochurko, 4700 and 4709 Park Manor Boulevard, east side of Shelby Road, north of 25 Mile Road, a leasing office. Mr. Snyder's here. Pete, let us know what you'd like to do.
Hello, Pete Snyder, Urban Land Consultants, 8800 23 Mile Road, Shelby Township, Michigan. It's probably going to be easier for me to explain this from the mobile mics. There we go. Now it's working. This is the Shelby Park Manor and Shelby Park Manor North and Shelby Park Manor North Phase 2, which have been before you in a variety of occasions over the past few years. Again, this is the original Shelby Park Manor. Those have been there for a while. This is the newest one. That building is nearing completion. That one, they're just doing the footing. And this is Shelby Park Manor North up here in green that was recently approved, but not under construction yet. The area that we're talking about is right here. Essentially, Mr. Lochurko is going to end up with about 1,000 units of rental out there, and he doesn't have a sales office. He's been using a couple of the units in this building right here as his sales area and storage kind of in the basement of that. And he's, quite honestly, he's outgrown that. He outgrew it a little while ago. He had approached us a while back about a sales office. We had plans. We even had plans approved a few years ago that were never built. But now he's actually ready to build. So this is the particular area that we're dealing with. Here's an upside down view, now right side up view of that area in the Shelby Park Manor development. So he's talking about a sales office right here, parking in front. This green here is the proposed sidewalk network in addition to what's already out there, some of which may be removed. I don't have a lot to say about this other than it really is time for a sales office out there. He's got a lot of units. On the review notes, which I received from your planner, a couple things I want to touch on. One is the issue of the garage and the driveway to the garage. It's labeled as a garage on the architect's plans. It's to store a golf cart. It's not for a vehicle. That's why there's no driveway to it. That's why you're not seeing it as a. Again, this complex will be big enough that getting around it makes a lot of sense on a golf cart, and they need a place to store that. So that's what that room labeled as a garage is for, and that's why it does not have a formal driveway. A couple other things on there about needing to show the lighting. Of course, he'll use the same acorn-style lighting as typical in the rest of the development. It's not on the plan. Certainly, we would add it and make sure that that's formalized. I don't, other than some engineering technicalities about how and why a septic field is probably the best, most cost-efficient way of servicing this, I don't think I have a lot that I need to present on it. So I'm certainly available for any questions you may have. I have a blow-up version of this on the reverse if you wanted to really dig into the plan, but that's really, I think, all I need to present on it right now. So I am available for any questions.
Okay, Mr. Nguyen, do you have anything, or Julie, do you have anything to say on this? I'm sorry.
No, Mr. Snyder addressed all the comments that I had. Typically, it's a nice building, nice facade. It matches the existing structures, but other than the minor corrections that need to be made to the plans, there's no other issues.
All right, thank you. Any commissioners have any questions on this?
Just clarification.
Go ahead, Mr. Dallo.
Mr. Snyder, is this any use for the tenant themselves, for meeting rooms or any of that matter?
No, the interior is strictly for the employees in the leasing office. There's no gathering space for any residents or anything like that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I do have one question. So you said the septic field, you're going with septic field, not connecting to the sanitary sewer.
That appears to be the most economical choice. If you want to know the answer to why, it's because it's because sanitary sewer is back here and down here.
But I thought there was one along Shelby Road.
There is potentially something here, which if I can talk to the sewer and water director and he'll allow me a pumped system, which is usually not allowed in Shelby, but if he'll allow me a pumped system, I could pump from here into, sort of a small pump system to here. But again, for chemistry reasons, Mr. Miller doesn't really like pump systems because they end up corroding his pipes downstream. He doesn't like them.
I just saw it on the township engineer's letter. I'm like, yeah, I agree. Why septic field?
Yeah.
But no, I guess I understand.
Yeah. And we're, obviously that's an engineering issue that is not, at this point, locked in. We're just showing it just in, because it looks like the best option right now.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, how many more units are you going to put in there? Is the extra side, the back side of that is going to be more units or not?
Meaning, meaning this plan?
Yeah, the green, I guess.
Yeah, this green is, I believe, 340 more units. Yeah, I was in front of this body a couple times last year.
My first one, I'm just catching up.
Yeah.
You may not know this or not, but what is your turnover rate there?
Turnover rate in terms of?
Rentals?
Actually, it's very low. That's why he likes this. He doesn't like building that building because it's a huge building and it's fairly complex to build. But once it's up, he likes the residents that are there, and he likes the fact that it's fairly low turnover in terms of people in and out, and it's kind of a more stable population than some of his other facilities. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, hearing none, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Dallo?
move to approve site plan 19-05, Michael DeCherco, Shelby Park Manor Apartments, 47004709, Park Manor Boulevard, part of parcel number 230705, 376014, and 013, located north of 25 Mile Road, east side of Shelby Road, subject to submission of a revised site plan addressing all department and engineering comments.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Dallo, supported by, was that Commissioner DeSico? Oh, Commissioner Boutros? Okay, sorry about that. Questions on the motion? Hearing none. Commissioner Dallo?
Yes.
Commissioner Boutros?
Yes.
Commissioner DeSico?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith?
Yes.
Commissioner Flynn?
Yes.
Commissioner Apone?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries. You're all set. Thanks, Pete. There's no new business, so we'll move on to the planning director's report. Mr. Nguyen, you're final report before you head off into retirement. So
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Thank you. This is our our annual report. The Planning Enabling Act requires the Planning Commission to send a report to the board every year outlining what you've done. Due to other more pressing agendas and at the commission level, we chose to delay presenting this to you until now. So I want to share some of accomplishments for 2018. Can we have the first slide, please, Richard? I think we have some. Next one, please. Thank you. So the first thing we always wanted to share with you is how many applications did we process over the last year. And, you know, much of our time is spent preparing for these meetings and for the Board of Zoning Appeals and for the Township Board. And, you know, we touch a lot of files during the year. Last year, we touched 410. We had 51 site plans, which is a fairly significant number. What really jumps off the page is how many rezoning applications we had. We had 18 last year. And that's a particularly big number. It signals development activity. It also signals a lot of extra staff work because notices and public hearing preparation. So we've averaged, you know, 410 was a high number. I remember once in late 90s, I think we reached 500. Phil, you may remember one of those years too. It was pretty high. Next slide, please. So beyond the what we call the current planning or agenda processing, there's some other activities we've been involved in, and some of these you've seen or been somewhat involved, but maybe not to the same degree as you are in agenda activity. These involve clear zoning, our community development block grant applications, capital improvement plan, the section 1 and 2 traffic study, and the community visioning. Next slide, please. Clear zoning. This is that new online interactive zoning ordinance. I think we've had it demonstrated for you before. It's the new format that we adopted last year. It's incredibly easy to use, much more interactive, and we were the first community in Macomb County to use this format. It's really been helpful at the counter, too. Next slide, please. Annually, our department's involved with administering a federal grant program called Community Development Block Grants. Money's used for housing rehab, for the library, for public service activities, and most recently been channeling much of that money into sidewalk projects. Last year we built a sidewalk on Phillip and Virginia that connects one neighborhood in the southwest area to Riverbends Park. This year we're building a sidewalk on Wakefield, and next year we're planning to extend part of a sidewalk on Shelby Road. So we can only use this money in designated areas. And last year we had a plan to put sidewalks on Cornwall for 2019, which is the street over from Wakefield. The day of the board meeting when they were going to allocate the money, the county told us the federal government changed the neighborhoods that were eligible. We had to go back and find a new neighborhood to do it. So that was a bit of a challenge, but it's a useful way to extending our sidewalk money. Next slide, please. Capital improvement process is part of our annual budgeting. This is budgeting for items that cost more than $10,000 that have a useful life exceeding 5 years. So we separate the budget out into capital expenditures and personnel and other expenditures. And the capital improvement plan, some of those relate to the master plan. So at the next meeting, we're going to give you a draft of those projects and ask you to make a recommendation to the board. We've done this for about 7 years now, Mike, I think, and it's a useful way of breaking the budget up into its component parts, and it's been done, I think, pretty efficiently. Our financial management department is really on top of this, and we assist them with helping kind of organize that. Next slide, please. The other project that I wanted to emphasize is the Section 1 and 2 traffic study, which you're well aware of. It's kind of a unique way to kind of look at that area in the big picture and not rely just on developers, engineers telling us what they think the impacts are going to be. And I think that could be a model we follow in the future as well. It's interesting, I think I may have mentioned Washington Township hired the same consultant doing a similar study on their side of 26 Mile Road. So it's kind of unique that we're working together in that way. And one more slide, please. Also, the community visioning process, you can see on the wall next to the screen, there's the top 10 priorities that the board established for 2019. That process starts with a community visioning exercise that we help organize for the board, where we invite people to come in and share their ideas and what's important to them, and then we sort through that, and that becomes the focal point for a lot of our department work during the year. Again, it's a useful reference point. We kind of establish these priorities, and we judge ourselves by whether we did them or not. So again, it's useful to be involved in that process. So that's pretty much a summary of what we've worked on this past year. And I want to thank Julie for putting this together, because it certainly looks a lot better than ones I've put together. It's been a good year, and it's nice to see these accomplishments.
Very good. Good job. Any commissioners have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Dallo.
Mr. Owen, is there a follow-up on the project that we mentioned that we visit, that they completed, not completed, they in the process, not in process?
You mean like for site plans?
Site plans, rezoning, all of
Yes.
the projects that we see here.
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you don't see when projects get approved. Like, here's an example. Mr. Snyder presented a project tonight. Julie identified some conditions. What will happen next is he'll resubmit the plan with the corrections. We check to make sure that all the conditions in the minutes have been satisfied, and before we stamp the plan and send it on to building and engineering. This process doesn't always work so smoothly as I'm describing tonight, because plans come back incomplete, then people don't want to do things. I had an occasion last week where the developer, that new apartment complex on the west side of Van Dyke between 25 and 26 Mile Road, called and said, do I have to plant all those bushes that are on the site plan? And I said, yeah, that's not a suggestion, that's a requirement. And I said, unless you want to come back and explain to the commission why you don't want to do it. And that conversation ended. But there's a fair amount of that, Mr. Dallo, that occurs afterwards to make sure that things are, things are being done properly. The Taco Bell is another good example. Our engineer caught something during engineering review, referred it back to us. So there's a nice little circle there. And building does the same thing to make sure that things don't fall through. I mean, sometimes they do, but what people represent here at the podium isn't what they intend to do. So we're always playing catch up with that. And sometimes it's less about planning than it is about babysitting. And it's really become an unfortunate part of our job, but a necessary part of one. But I'm glad you raised that question, because it's some days that's all we do.
Thank you, Mr. Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Dallo.
Anyone else have any questions? All right, hearing none, a motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Boutros.
I would like to make a motion to accept the Planning and Zoning Department's annual report for 2018 and forward the report to the Board of Trustees for their consideration.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Boutros, supported by Commissioner DeSico. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, Commissioner Boutros,
Yes.
Commissioner DeSico,
Yes.
Commissioner Dallo,
Yes.
Commissioner Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith,
Yes.
Commissioner Flynn,
Yes.
Commissioner Apone,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else, so Mr. Dallo,
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Could you